It's Tim Flanagan here with Audrey Averill. Very excited to be with you. We have a 3-part series we're getting ready to kick off here around the power of partnership. So we're going to start this series unpacking a little bit about the journey that Audrey and I have been on to formalize our partnership, which was done earlier this year. I think it's appropriate that everyone get to know who Audrey is a little bit more. And in the course of doing that, I'm going to throw in a little bit more about my background as well, and just kind of the history of how we got to this point and where we're headed as an organization, as the Pelora Group, as we go into 2026 and subsequent future years. So thanks for being with us. Audrey, great to finally be able to get to do this.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. I'm so happy to be here with you today, and I'm really excited for this 3-part series, and especially unpacking our journey respectively and together with the Pelora Group.
Yeah, well, I think maybe as a starting point, it would be good to talk a little bit about your journey into our firm.
Yes.
How did you actually end up at the firm that is now the Pelora Group? It was not the Pelora Group back then. I guess it was HF Financial back when you started 17 years ago.
Yes. You know, the truth of the matter is financial services has always been in my blood. If I think back to my great-grandfather who was in the business during the Great Depression, and actually selling insurance was what helped their family sustain through the Depression.
Oh, wow.
And he actually he was my nanny's father. When my grandfather was trying to figure out what he was trying to do in life, my great-grandfather introduced him to the financial services industry, and he actually started as an advisor with MetLife back in the 1950s and eventually became a president of an insurance company. And if we kind of follow the bouncing ball from there, both my mother and my father were in the financial services industry. And so you could imagine, one would think that growing up I would be very running towards, I'm going to be in the conditioned to be in the financial services industry. And when I went away to college to UVA, I had my sights set on being an attorney in the child advocacy world.
Oh, you would have been a good attorney.
Thank you, Tim. And graduated during the great, financial crisis of 2007. And so that kind of limited the options of opportunity coming into the marketplace. And quite frankly, I just wanted to work. And I was grateful to be able to enter into the working world, and just so happened through my connections. As I mentioned, my mother and father were both in the financial services industry. Ended up working with an advisor who transitioned over to HF Financial at that point. And at that time, I was an assistant. And if I'm being honest, in the back of my mind, I always thought that I'll just work a couple of years and then I'll go back to law school and, fulfill my passion at the time, which was child advocacy. And as I got into the industry and really started working with, at the time, HF Financial, now the Pelora Group, really ignited a passion in me. And I guess you could say that I saw what my grandfather enjoyed in the financial services industry, and my parents as well. And that really set a path for the future of where we are today. So I guess it was destined, and I tried to fight destiny, and here we are. You
You lost that fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Thankfully so.
Well, and I think it's, I think there's some fun facts that you neglected to share, one of which is both your parents worked for MassMutual.
That's true. Interestingly enough, I was born in Springfield, Massachusetts. My parents' first job was at MassMutual many, many years ago. And I think there might be a picture circulating around of me as a baby at one of the MassMutual Christmas parties. So if I find it, I'll share it with everybody, but I know it's out there.
Well, I thought that was a neat tie-in to the fact that as a result of destiny and its hand coming into your life, here you are 17 years later,
Absolutely.
President of the Pelora Group.
Absolutely.
And my partner. So why don't we talk a little bit about, you mentioned you worked for an advisor.
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out the facts we'll kind of share and not share there. But ultimately, you were working for an advisor. There was an opportunity that I had to kind of share you part-time. So we were sharing, I guess you were working with him half-time and us half-time.
Yep.
So you came to work for us half-time, and you very much quickly showed some exceptional initiative and promise. And again, you were not doing anything terribly fancy at the time, but I was very impressed just with your work ethic and how smart you were and how fast you got things done, which was a little different than what we were used to at that time. So I got a phone call. I'll never forget the advisor, and I don't remember why. Doesn't really matter. I was driving up 77. It was raining. I was coming up from Columbia, South Carolina, and he was in a panic. He's like, I don't think I can afford Audrey anymore. What am I going to do? And I said, oh, I'll hire her. So we made the decision to have you join us full time, and threw you into a role that was sort of new to you.
Yes.
What do you remember about the journey? Because I've got my own story here. Before I keep going, what do you remember about the early years?
It's funny, as I was coming into this episode today, I was thinking back. 17 years go by very quickly.
It went by really fast.
Right? You blink your eye and you're now one of the old people in the office, not one of the young people.
41 years old.
Now, people are working for us born in the 2000s, and I'm like, you should still be in elementary school, but I digress. In any case, one of the things when I was working for that advisor that I really enjoyed was, for lack of a better word, winning, right? And helping people achieve their goals. And at the time, I was supporting a group, a sales team. And for them, every case, every client was really important to them. And so it was about making a great experience, getting to a yes, and helping them obtain that client. And at the time, we were very insurance focused, move through the underwriting process. And it felt really good when there was that success for that advisor. When I transitioned into the firm full time, I really focused in, and my primary role was in the new business sphere. So I was able to accelerate and scale my desire to help these young advisors really grow in their practice. And one of the really fun things about new business is you get to negotiate. You get to figure out how to solve to a yes. And you get to look at how to help everybody get to their goals. At the time, I created this very large spreadsheet, which thankfully technology has allowed us to progress, and I don't have to manually enter things into. And every day there was, looking at what cases can go, what can we progress forward, what can we do for moving the ball forward. And in that role, I had a lot of autonomy and independence. Yet Tim and I were just beginning to work together. And so I was used to, well, I say I'm going to do it. Of course I'm going to do it. And of course I'm going to get to a yes. And so it was very interesting in those early years. I was still new to the working world. I was learning myself. I was learning how I wanted to show up, how I wanted to articulate myself. I was trying to figure out how I fit in as a predominantly male-dominated industry, as a strong female. And I was just learning Tim and how he operated in the organization. The one thing I will say about Tim that I will never forget is, I for a very short period of time worked at another firm with this advisor before we transitioned over to HF Financial, the Pelora Group now. And when I was at the other firm, the person who was in charge probably saw me in the hallway 10 times, never said hello, never paid attention to me, never really acknowledged my existence because I wasn't a person of significance or important at that time. And the very first day I walked into the now Pelora Group, Tim passed me in the hallway and he said, "Hey, Audrey, how you doing?" And I'm like, he knows my name. He knows who I am. And again, it was my very first day. And I'll never forget that because that set the tone of how Tim led, how he wanted the culture of the organization, how he made people feel. And that was my very first experience at the time before I even was working for the firm, even in a part-time basis. And so coming into the firm in a full-time basis, I really got to know Tim a little bit better. But I always remembered how open and friendly and welcoming Tim was. Yet it took us a little time to get into our dance,
We did.
right?
Yes. There was a little bump in the road or two.
Yeah, but at that time, I think what helped continue to progress, our working relationship is the ability to communicate and the ability to be, able to, talk with one another. And I think that was super helpful.
Yeah, and I think that a future episode is around trust. But one of the things that I distinctly remember, is it okay if I tell the story?
Oh, of course you may.
All right. So we worked with a business coach, Harvey Smith. We were having a team meeting, which were always spirited events. And I was pretty scattered leader, but at the time. And I did not know that I was not showing up so great with Audrey as far as trusting her in her role. I thought I was checking in. And there was like this intervention that broke out in the middle of my meeting with our business coach. And you spoke to me very directly that day, very professionally and directly. And it was great because it kind of jarred me in the sense of, wow, this is how I'm showing up for this person who's doing this really important job in the organization. I need to stop that. And I think that is, to your point, kind of the beginning of which we'll get into in our second episode, the relationship trust factor that was built was the ability to have that kind of direct communication and listen to each other.
Yes.
So you kind of touched on a few of the early years, and then all of a sudden, boom, here you are, president, partner, general agent. One of the things that I recall a lot, and again, kind of curious as to your recollection since we've never sat down and actually unpacked the last 17 years, is the firm was growing, but there was always something going off the rails. And every time something was going off the rails, it was like I turned around and you were there and you're like, I'll take care of it. And not take care of it like I'll clean up the mess you just made, but I'll take care of, I think I have a better way. I think we can do this differently. We can, approach the situation differently. And, I think when I talk to people about our working relationship and how you got to where you are today, that was one of the constant themes is no matter what was going on, when something wasn't working well, you always had an idea how to make it better. So what do you kind of remember about that phase of our journey together?
Yeah, I think as a business grows, and what I will say is when I first started working for the firm, it was much smaller than it is today.
Really tiny.
And when you think about the evolution of the firm and the Pelora Group, it really transformed from a very small, closely held business. Some may say like a mom and pop shop, right? Where, it was very small and things from that perspective.
No systems.
Right, no systems. We just kind of were like, well, we'll figure it out. And it's easy to do that when you have such a smaller population that you're supporting. And over time, our organization grew, and there were some exponential growth pieces through mergers and acquisitions and things like that. And so it's normal and natural in my world, in my brain, is you can't prepare and then be like, okay, we've got it all ready. It's sometimes you have to be agile to fix things on the fly. And I love solving problems. I love finding solutions. My mantra is there is always a solution to a problem. And so as we grew and we made these big growth jumps, of course there's going to be bottlenecks. And of course there's going to be transition elements that you really didn't think about, or, bringing teams together. How do you, navigate and negotiate all of those different pieces? And so for me, it was like speaking to my love language of, okay, let's figure this out. Let's roll up our sleeves. And the thing that I really enjoy in those different interludes. And it was starting a new business, working on our finance team, going into compliance now with our new org development. I really enjoy doing the role for a period of time. And I think when you do that, you authentically understand what the organization needs, and then you can work to staff it appropriately and staff it properly. And that's the stuff that I really enjoyed. I never looked at it as a cleanup. I never looked at it as like, "Oh, I've got to go fix this. I'm the janitor. Let me go." I loved it because to me, it was like I got a new understanding of a different part of the organization. I got to interface with new people, build new connections, build new relationships, but then build something better than I could do it, right? So I would have a platform that I could say like, okay, I can do this, but let me hire somebody who's even better than me and I know what to hire for. That's one of the things I would say in any business, whether it's an advisor's practice who's growing and adding more advisors, or even us as we're growing, is in order to staff it properly, in my opinion, you have to really understand what the different departments need. And I think that was something that was super exciting to me. Again, and this goes back to, our forming working relationship is I always ask to sit at tables that I probably shouldn't have sat at. Not probably shouldn't have sat at, but maybe was not qualified to sit at, right? And Tim always said yes. And it wasn't that I was there like sharing ideas or being like, I'm running this meeting now. It allowed me to observe. And that's something that I thought was truly impactful in my growth in the organization to help with those different times when we said, oh no, this department needs a little tune up, or this is not going well.
Or a whole new leader.
Right. It was super helpful for me. And like I said, I love learning new things. I love taking on new challenges. And as I have worked in the different departments, it helps to thread the needle even better for what we do, how we support our advisors, and how we can grow as an organization. So for me, yeah, of course it is scary walking into the finance department, right? Where I'm now responsible for payroll. I'm now responsible for making sure our advisors get paid. And I don't know how to do any of it. I don't know what buttons to click. And it's like, I'll figure it out. And it's just having that resilience of saying like, I may not know how to do it today, but if I'm disciplined and diligent, then I'll learn how to do it and I can teach somebody to do it better than me. And who we have in our finance department now, that's just one example. It's much better than I ever was and has taken the department to new levels, but it allows us to really make a great organization.
Well, and I think that's, been one of the themes that I talk about when I'm speaking of our relationship with people is how no matter what you were tasked with, you found a way to get it done. And, one example was when we, had our leader of compliance who was doing a very good job, got hired away. I thought he was just moving. And then he said, no, I'm leaving. I was like, oh my gosh, I am now going to crawl up in a ball and cry. And I went to tell you, and you were like me, like, oh, wow. And the next day you came in and you said, you know what? This is my next challenge. And I'm like, but you're not even licensed for it. And you're like, I'll get that done too. And you took over that part of the business at that time, and you've done this repeatedly and made it better even than it was, which was pretty darn solid. And you got your licenses, which is no small feat inside of 7 months. So I think that's, again, one of the things that has made you unique is your ability to, as we say in C12, be the buffalo, run into the storm and figure out how to square away the chaos.
Yeah. And at the same token, Tim, this goes back to the power of partnership is, you were open to allowing me to do that. Right. And
I had confidence in
right.
you, yes.
And that is.
And I certainly didn't want to do that job. So I was like, you can do that. I'm like, oh my God.
You know what? Compliance is a delightful department and a delightful role. And I think we have great people who are part
You did
of
a great job with it.
Yeah. But that's the thing that I would say is what is so special to me and unique about this partnership is there is a yin and yang of, passing the baton back and forth to one another when the organization needs it, and identifying those particular scenarios and situations.
Yeah, and I think again, kind of the other inflection point on the journey was back to Harvey Smith, working with Harvey. You and I were having a conversation. We were in a little rough patch, and we were talking about who you wanted to be as a leader. Mm-hmm. And I will never forget that meeting. It was early in the morning. The sun was coming through the window. And you said, I know exactly who I want to be as a leader. I want to be the COO of this company. And here's why. And here's how I want to show up as a leader. Mm-hmm. And it was unbelievable clarity. I want you to share a little bit about who inspired you for that.
Yeah.
And you were a little modest when you said your grandfather was the president of an insurance company.
Yeah.
It was kind of a big insurance company. So.
Well, I mean, I was very blessed to have just a phenomenal, family around me, but particularly with my grandfather. They moved to North Carolina in 1981. We moved to North Carolina in Charlotte in the early 90s. And so my entire childhood was filled with being around Jim Grimaldi, Papa, as I would call him. So I was able to really absorb and live and see kind of who he was. He retired when he was 51. And so I spent my entire childhood thinking that all grandparents, played golf every day.
Business, career, and then retired at 51.
Yeah, that's honestly what I thought. And they, all had a, whole area with candy and, things like that. Anyway, but what I admired about my grandfather is a couple of things. Number one is he was a very strong person. He was a very thoughtful person. He was a very well-respected person. And he also had a tenderness and a kindness to him that, it's funny. I was talking to my mom the other day, and she was like, you are very much like your grandfather in that you have a very tough exterior, but you have a very sensitive and tender heart. And it was interesting, as I was coming over today, I have a voicemail on my birthday from about 6 years ago. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed away the day after Thanksgiving that same year. And, he said, he always had his funny, like, hey, it's Papa, and I'm sorry my card is late. And I was like, you're dying of cancer. It's okay if your card is late. But he always thought of those types of things. And he said, Audrey, at the time I was turning 35. I won't say what year it was, because then you'll figure out how old I am.
But your age. Yeah. We'll edit it out.
Yeah. I was like, well, at the time I was turning 35, and he said, Audrey, I know that there are great things in store for you. And I believe when you turn 35, that's when things really happen in your career. And every year something greater will happen. And I listened to that. I listen to it every once in a while because I miss them. I really, truly wish he could see where life has led me since those 6 years that he said that. And he, every career move that I made or every new responsibility that I took on, he was super proud of me. And I remember even when I was like, just a support staff to an advisor, he always complimented how I approached things, how I thought through things. And one of my favorite pastimes we'd be sitting around the kitchen table and just talking. And he was very funny, and I just have such great memories of him. But at the very core of who he was and why I wanted to be a leader like him is that he was thoughtful. He always did the right thing, and he always treated people with respect. And that was something, like, people respected him in the community, and it was because he was a good person. Mm-hmm. It wasn't because, oh, look at me, I was the president of
retired at 51.
Retired at 51, all of those types of things. It was just because he was a good person, and people respected just the way that he lived his life. Mm-hmm. And the same is true for my nanny, which was his wife who predeceased him. And so for me, when I thought about being a leader, I always said, I want to be just like my papa. And not because of the status, not because of the position, but just because of who he was.
Yeah, the essence of who he was.
The essence of who he was, always doing the right thing, kind and respectful, but was a firm and thoughtful leader.
Yeah.
And that's what I really appreciated about him.
I remember that day, and I obviously got to meet him on more than one occasion, but I remember that day well, and I was like, if that's who you want to be, I'm all in on helping you get there because that's what we need. Yeah. And so, kind of bringing us now to this modern era, we've been reminiscing here, telling stories. How did we get to where we are? So 7 years ago, we decided to implement EOS. And EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system. There are literally thousands of businesses that run on it now. And it's a journey to figure out how to implement it. One of the tenets of EOS is that there's a visionary and an integrator. Mm-hmm. And they're two very different roles. And yet when you start out on EOS, it's not uncommon for the owner to be both the visionary and EOS and the integrator in EOS. So that's the seat. I sat in both seats. The whole team, myself included, knew he's not an integrator. Why is he sitting in that seat? And, I was trying to figure out, well, how do we do this and who should be the integrator? And I'll skip a few stories because, again, I screwed that up a couple times. But the thing that became very clear, probably in the last 3 or 4 years, is because we had been working together pretty closely. You did become the COO of the business, and so we had a lot of interaction around the finances, and we went through a pretty rough spat there that you led us through well. But with EOS, it became more and more apparent that Tim is definitely not the integrator. And he's the visionary, and we got to get him out of the integrator seat. Mm-hmm. And that was when we finally were like, all right, let's just call it what it is. Audrey is going to be the integrator. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that role, what that meant, and we'll kind of bring it to where we are today from there.
Yes. So I think EOS is a great tool to help you navigate an organization, keeps you, kind of focused and, thoughtful in how you run meetings and things like that. As I took over the integrator role, there was a piece of how our working relationship already was where, I kind of acted as the silent integrator.
Yes.
And part of the, right. And the consigliere. That's what I always like to think of myself as, the consigliere, which is I'm kind of in the background going, okay, yes, okay, no, but ultimately my responsibility as the integrator of the firm is to be a giant filter. And so, one of the really important things in working with any visionary is you have to allow ideas to come through. Because if you constantly shut down, say no, or don't even allow a conversation from that perspective, it stifles creativity, it stifles movement forward, all of the things that are really important in a growing business. And so as the integrator, one of the things that you have to do is to be able to identify the opportunities in that ideation that the visionary always comes with. One of the things that will tire out an integrator is if they feel like they can't be a filter and say no to things, right? Every idea is an idea.
And I got lots of them.
Right. But what is really great when you have a good kind of rhythm from that perspective is you can kind of pick out some of the pieces of ideas and say, what if we put it together this way? And it allows for your creativity to continue to move through. But what the integrator really is trying to do is shield, for lack of a better word, from the rest of the organization, this bombardment of ideas
the
and chaos of thinking, well, I thought we said this, and now we're running here, and now we're running here. And so it's really important, from a communication standpoint, to be able to communicate and feel comfortable giving ideas back and forth, but then also feeling comfortable in saying, like, yes, this is a great idea. Let's filter it down to the rest of the team to really kind of, mature it out. or saying like, no, not right now. I hear you, but let's wait 6 months from now. And these are the 3 things we need to have happen. Or it's like, absolutely not. That is not a great idea.
No way.
And the interesting thing for me as the integrator is when you work with a visionary long enough, sometimes you can get really excited about ideas and you're like, yeah, let's go, let's do this. But then you have to kind of, pull yourself back a little bit and say, okay, how is this realistic, right? Is this actually going to happen? The really cool thing is it allows for this development of an idea before it brings it down to the team. So then the team can really hear an articulated and well thought out idea and then make it even better. Because the truth of the matter is the integrator is not the person who makes the idea come to fruition. The integrator is the person who connects and works through the rest of the team once we have identified the vision, the success metrics of it, and what the outcome that we're looking for. And I think that's one of the things that's really important and what I like to do, even as we were in a meeting this morning, is understanding what we need to accomplish, understanding who needs to be a part of that, and making sure that there are clear next steps moving forward. Doesn't mean that I'm a part of every single project. However, it allows me to connect the right people to the project to bring it to fruition. And I think that's one of the things that in any organization, you can have somebody who has no ideas but can put things together. It doesn't work. You can have somebody who has all the ideas in the world and can't bring them to fruition. It's when you have both of them together that really makes the magic of an organization profitable, growing, exciting, invigorated, all of those types of things that keeps, the biggest fear for us as an organization is to stay stagnant. The environment isn't stagnant.
Nope.
Life isn't stagnant. Technology isn't. And so we don't want that to be a part of our organization. And on the flip side, we just have to hone in on what are the key ideas.
Can't run in 5 directions at once.
Yes.
Although
Very true.
I've tried.
Yeah.
I've tried. It doesn't work very well. I guess the one thing I would say to that is what I've watched you do is get really good, not only being an integrator, but having vision. Mm-hmm. So I know I'm a visionary. I know that I'm not an integrator, but I've watched you develop both skill sets. Clearly, you're a natural integrator. So it's helped catapult us forward. So kind of bringing us to where we are today, this journey. So March of 2025, one of the goals that you had set probably 2 years ago was, I'd really like to be your partner officially, be recognized as a general agent. You got admitted to the Field Leadership Development Program, went through that process. And in March of this year, we've got you to that point. You got yourself to that point. You got appointed a general agent. Talk a little bit about that journey for you.
A great question, Tim. And, I'm so thankful and blessed to have been able to be named a general agent in MassMutual. I come to this position unique in 2 respects. One is being a woman a female general agent. There are not very many at MassMutual and in the industry in particular. And so that allows me to be a little bit unique in that situation. We just went to a conference where I think I was one of 6 women
which
in the room.
Which is the most there's ever been.
Which is the most there's ever been, which is great, right?
It's progress.
And it matches the industry and the environment around us where there are a lot of women leaders in different sectors of industry. So that's one unique aspect that I bring to the table. The second one is traditionally, most general agents at MassMutual have been historically an advisor. And sometimes people look at that and they're like, whoa, you've never been an advisor and now you're leading this organization. And I understand that. And what I always like to share from that perspective is 2 things. As I mentioned before, our organization has grown from a very small, tightly knit, very few staff to a very large organization. And so what I like to bring to the table is my ability to run an organization. That comes from financials, that comes from compliance, that comes from hiring, firing, growing staff, all of those, really important things. Because the truth of the matter is, if we didn't have all of those mechanisms in place, our advisors wouldn't be able to successfully navigate their practice on our platform. The other piece that I always like to talk about is, while I've never been client face-to-face, a lot of the parts of my roles and responsibilities does have me in a similar interface. And we think about the recruiting front. Part of my responsibility is to invite really great people to be a part of our organization. And that means that I have to really articulate our vision, really articulate our value proposition, and help to understand the need of the advisor and how we can help them with that need. Whether they're, like I like to call them green peas, right? They're brand new into the industry, brand new into the organization, or they have a little experience under their belt or a lot of experience under their belt and want to pursue our new platform. And so what that comes into play is very important skill sets that I think link back to advisors, which is really good listening, curiosity, question asking, identifying a need, and being able to align a solution to that need. But at the same time, some of the things that are really important, you have to be persistent. You have to be impeccable with your word. You have to follow up and follow through. And you have to be okay if somebody says no or no right now. And that's the thing that is really important, that I think I do have a perspective for our advisors in how they have to go into the marketplace. And tied to that is I help make sure that the organization is running efficiently for today's environment, but then also thinking of the future and the future environment, which, as we know, changes every minute.
Yeah, well, and at a very rapid pace. Yeah, I mean, I think the issue, which have been questioned before, but she hasn't been an advisor. I'm like, and she's done everything else in the organization exceptionally well. And we're not going to do this, but I know if we said, okay, let's go be an advisor for a year, you'd do a great job. But to your point, that's not what the business needs today.
Mm-hmm.
When I came in 37 years old, 22 years ago, to your point, most of the people that ended up running an organization, much smaller organization, were salespeople, and they were sales organizations. We're still a sales organization in a traditional sense that, people have to go out and get clients and get those clients to do business with them. But it's a lot more complex than that. And I think that's where, as I think about your characteristics, that we've kind of discussed here today, your curiosity, you have wisdom way beyond your years, your ability to see situations and understand people, your ability to hire good people and to develop those people even more are exceptional skill sets that I think the firm of the future needs to have. Not, again, the past was salesy organization. I kind of jokingly say it was somebody that would go wine and dine people and take them out drinking and having dinner and all that stuff. And that's not what this business is about anymore. I mean, there's a little element of that.
Right. I mean, there's always going to be a relationship aspect of the
there's
business.
Relationship,
right.
But it's not all about that.
Yeah.
It's about running a business.
Responsibility and my purpose is to continue to provide value for our advisors' practices. And that comes in a number of different ways. And most importantly, it's, for me, as we continue to move forward, is finding the people, finding the resources to help continue to infuse that value into your practice. And that's something that I feel very passionate about.
Yeah. And again, you've built an amazing team to help you do that. So, all right. Well, I think this is a good place for us to conclude our first episode. Our next one's going to be more about trust and vulnerability and the development of the culture, and maybe a little bit more details on how we work together. And I know I mentioned a little bit of vision, but I think it's more appropriate. This episode was more about getting people to know you a little bit more and how we came to be and how this relationship works. And then we can get into the kind of the more future-oriented state in the next
great.
2 episodes. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being with us. Join us for our next episode where we kind of unpack the trust and relationship dynamics of a great partnership. as well as talk about the things that really foundationally help an organization grow with great partners.